By the end of this lesson, you're going to feel confident with all areas of your English because in this lesson, we're going to do different activities that focus on different areas. You'll improve your listening skills, reading, writing, vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and all of this will help you feel confident speaking English in public. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. Here's how this lesson will work. This is a long lesson, but it's divided into specific sections. You can watch the entire lesson from start to finish, or you can simply watch one section, take a break, come back and continue with another section. So the choice is yours. The first section, we're going to focus on improving your listening skills of fast-speaking native English speakers. And at the same time, you'll still expand your vocabulary, improve your pronunciation, and improve your grammar, your speaking skills. You'll do all of that at the same time as well. Here's how this lesson will work. I'm going to say a sentence 3 times, and you need to write down exactly what you hear in the comments. After, I'll explain exactly what I said, and I'll explain the pronunciation changes that take place in fast English, and I'll also explain the advanced expressions that I used. Are you ready for your first listening test? Remember, I'll say it 3 times. They've been bickering all day. They've been bickering all day. They've been bickering all day. Did you get this one? I said, they've been bickering all day. Let's talk about the pronunciation changes. Notice I have they've. This is a contraction. They have, they've. Native speakers use contractions in spoken English almost 100% of the time, so you need to be very comfortable hearing the contraction because it affects the grammar of the sentence. You need to have they have been bickering because that shows the grammar, and the grammar is the present perfect continuous. So if you didn't have that, it would be grammatically incorrect. They've been bickering all day. Now notice I said been, a very unstressed been. This is how we pronounce the past participle of the verb be, been, in American English. I don't speak British English, but I believe in British English they pronounce it more stressed, been, but in American English we don't do that. We just say been. They've been bickering all day. Now, to understand fast English outside of the classroom, you need to hear the individual words, but you also have to understand the meaning of the words. So let's talk about the verb to bicker. This is when you argue about things that are not important. The concept of bickering is extremely common and everyone does it, and we usually do it with people we spend the most time with, our family, our spouses, husbands and wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, our close friends, our coworkers that we spend a lot of time with. Anytime you spend a lot of time with someone, it's common that you'll bicker. But it's different from fighting because when you're fighting with someone, usually there's a strong emotion involved, but when you bicker, you don't really have that emotion. It's less serious because the things you're arguing about, fighting about, are not actually important. Like I said, this can be very common in the workplace when you spend a lot of time with your coworkers. So maybe you're in a meeting and you've been discussing an issue for hours with your coworkers, but people start bickering. They start arguing about things that aren't important. You could say, we didn't get anything done today because we bickered all meeting.
We argue? We bicker. Yeah, we bicker.
Either.
Yeah, well, we were bickering because they were bickering.
Mark, your kids are bickering.
Let's try this again with another listening exercise. I'll say it 3 times. That street's pretty sketchy. That street's pretty sketchy. That street's pretty sketchy. How'd you do with this one? I said, that street's pretty sketchy. Did you hear that streets, the S? Well, that is the verb to be in a contraction form. The street is the streets. The street's pretty sketchy. Again, it's extremely important that you hear these contractions for grammar because we need the verb to be grammatically. The sentence would sound very awkward if you didn't have it because it would be grammatically incorrect. That street's pretty sketchy. Sketchy, 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 sketchy. Let's talk about to be sketchy. That street is our verb to be sketchy. This is used to say that something is not completely safe. So by saying that street's pretty sketchy, I am saying that street doesn't look completely safe. I don't think that street is safe. So I'm saying we shouldn't go down that street. We should avoid that street. Now, why would I say this street is sketchy? This is an adjective that native speakers use a lot. If I say a street's sketchy, it's most likely because it's dark or lacks lighting. There aren't a lot of people around. There's broken glass or broken windows. Or there are a lot of abandoned buildings on that street. It could be all of those reasons, or it could be just one of those reasons for me to say that street doesn't look safe. That street's pretty sketchy. I could say, let's take another street. This one looks sketchy. So I can also use the verb look sketchy, but I have to conjugate it. This street looks sketchy. Or let's say your friend or your husband or your wife came to you and said, hey, I heard this amazing business proposal today. All we need to do is invest $1,000 and we're guaranteed $100,000. And you could say, that sounds sketchy. So notice here the verb is to sound sketchy. And you're saying the idea, the plan, the business proposal doesn't sound completely safe. We also use this to describe people. He's a sketchy guy, or he's sketchy, she's sketchy. In this case, you're saying the person isn't safe, which means you can't trust the person. So with people, it's a way of saying, I don't think I can trust him. She's sketchy, he's sketchy.
Seems a little sketchy.
You're kind of sketchy.
Laundry to some sketchy laundromat?
Let's try another listening exercise. I'll say it 3 times. You must have seen it. You must have seen it. You must have seen it. Did you get this one? You must have seen it. But notice, I didn't actually say have. I reduced that entirely to just You musta. You musta. I could also reduce it to more of an of sound, which is very commonly done by native speakers. You must have. You must have. You must have seen it. Notice for seen it, I use that that N sound to connect the 2 words together. Seen it. Seen it. Seen it. So you hear a N in front of it. It sounds like knit. But if you say those 2 words together, it blends together. Seen it. Seen it. You must have seen it. Now let's talk about the grammar of this. Must is a modal verb, and grammatically you need must plus base verb, which is the verb without to. So grammatically you need must have. In written English, you must use must have seen it, because that's grammatically correct. But in spoken English, it will sound like must a or must of. But in written English, if you wrote you must a or of, it would be incorrect grammatically. So just remember what I'm explaining is for spoken English.
You must have seen it 200 times.
You must have seen it too, Clark.
You must have seen them here.
Let's try this one more time. I'll say it 3 times. What's the ETA? What's the ETA? What's the ETA? I said, what's the ETA? Of course, we have what's. That's a contraction of what is. What's the. Now, because ETA, it begins with a vowel sound, E, I could say either the or the, because we do a more stressed the when the next word starts in a vowel, but this isn't a rule that native speakers follow all the time. But if I did a more stressed E in the, it would really blend together with ETA, the TA, and it would almost sound like it's just one word, the TA, because I wouldn't really repeat the E on ETA, the TA. I believe in my example when I did the listening test, I think the first time I did it more of the ETA, and the second time I did it more of the ETA, and the sounds blended together. Let's listen to that again and see what I did. What's the ETA? What's the ETA? What's the ETA? Now, ultimately, either way that you pronounce it, the ETA or the ETA, is fine. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what's ETA? This stands for estimated time of arrival. So your ETA, the ETA, or someone, something's ETA is the estimated time of arrival for that someone or something, when it's expected to arrive. So let's say we're talking about a project and your boss wants to know when this project will arrive in his inbox or on his desk. He could say, what's the ETA? And he could just say the if it's obvious you're talking about the project. He could say, what's your ETA? Because you're the one submitting the project. Or he could say, what's the project's ETA? So the ETA belongs to the project, so you need that possessive. What's the project's ETA? And they all have the same meaning. We commonly use this with friends or coworkers, family members, to let them know when we're going to arrive. So let's say you were supposed to be at your family's house at 7 o'clock for dinner, but you're running late. You could send them a text message and say, running late. Google says my ETA is 6:42 or 15 minutes. Now, Google says, because when you put something in a GPS, Google will tell you, or whatever you use, Google will tell you when you're expected to arrive. That's your ETA.
What's their ETA?
Okay, ETA?
ETA, 11 minutes.
Now let's do an imitation exercise so you can practice your pronunciation as well. So I'm going to say each sentence again, and then I want you to repeat the sentence out loud and try to imitate my pronunciation as closely as possible. And I'll say each sentence 3 times. Let's do that right now. They've been bickering all day. They've been bickering all day. They've been bickering all day. That street's pretty sketchy. That street's pretty sketchy. That street's pretty sketchy. You must have seen it. You must have seen it. You must have seen it. What's the ETA? What's the ETA? What's the ETA? Amazing job. Now let's continue on. If you want to take a break, feel free to do so. In our next section, we're going to read a news article together. This article focuses on a very current event, and it talks about Will and Jada Smith. Now, we're reading this so you can improve all areas of your English at once and be entertained with this interesting story at the same time. So let's start this section now. First, I'll read the headline, Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith Healing Relationship. I'm sure you recognize these two celebrities, and I've talked about them on my YouTube channel before. Now let's talk about healing relationship. This is what we call short form, and is often used in bullet points and news article headlines. This is when you want to be concise and you exclude necessary grammar. Now, there are some words missing. We need the auxiliary verb are, because this is the present continuous. Are healing. We need are because we have two people, they. They are healing relationship. We need a possessive. The possessive would be their relationship because the relationship belongs to them, so it's their relationship. Now, technically, the sentence is grammatically incorrect without this information, but we just call that short form, which, as I said, is very commonly used in newspaper headlines and bullet forms. But for you, you should always use all the necessary grammar when you're writing. Now, don't worry about taking these notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF, so you can look for the link in the description. Now, let's continue. Jada Pinkett Smith has said she and Will Smith are working very hard on their marriage. Now, notice here, because we're no longer in the headline, we're in the story, they are going to use full grammar. So you see the auxiliary verb are, and you see their marriage, just like we needed their relationship and are healing. So as soon as you get into the body of the article, they will use proper, correct grammar because it's no longer short form. They're working very hard on their marriage. So it's always important when you're reading to pay attention to the prepositions that you need to complete a sentence, because often students use the incorrect preposition, but to a native speaker, it's very noticeable if you have the wrong preposition. So you work on something. I'm working on the report. And then you can add more information to describe how you're working. We're working very hard on our report, our proposal, our presentation, on our relationship, our marriage. After revealing last week that they separated in 2016. Okay, so only last week they revealed. Let's talk about this verb. When you reveal something, usually information, it means that you make it public. So you announce it, you make it known. Now, public could be just to your family, just to your friends. It doesn't have to be to the entire world like the actors did in this case. So you make that information known, but previously that information was a secret. So they purposely didn't tell anyone that they were separated. But then they revealed last week that they separated in 2016, quite a long time ago. Now notice here, they separated. This is a verb, to separate. When you separate, it means you and your spouse, your husband, your wife, decide to no longer live together, and you're considering whether or not you're going to get a divorce or try to reconcile. So that's the verb to separate. But notice, I think I said they revealed that they're separated, because you can also use this in the to be form. So to be separated, you're describing your current state. Oh, I'm not married, I'm separated, which means my husband and I no longer live together. which for me is not true. It was just an example, but for this couple, it is true. They have been living separately. Like I said, when you separate, that's kind of the word, right? To separate. You separate your lives, you live separately. They've been living separately. Now, we know the time reference, 2016, so I could add, do you know what I need to add? 2016. What word do I need here? They have been living separately. 2016. Since 2016, hopefully you got that right, because this is the present perfect continuous and we know our time reference. They have been living separately since 2016, she said, despite regularly appearing together. So they would be in public together, their photos would be on magazines, online. So you and I, as the general public, we would think that they're still together, they're married, they're happy, because that's how they appeared. But in fact, in reality, they separated in 2016. So notice here, despite, notice the grammar, because our verb is appear, but you need it in the gerund form because despite is a preposition. So you need that gerund. Regularly is the adverb that describes how frequently they were appearing together. Regularly. It happened often. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, the movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. The couple made headlines last year when Will Smith stormed the stage at the Oscars and slapped host Chris Rock. Now, I'm not going to explain what this means or discuss it because I have a full lesson on this exact topic. I included the link to that at the end. So I have one on that exact news headline. And then there's another one when they discuss it a few months after the incident. So there are two other articles you can review about Will Smith and this issue. So I won't discuss it now. So let's go on to this paragraph here. Speaking to NBC's Today Show, she said, the she being Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife, Jada, she said, "We are working very hard at bringing our relationship together back to a life partnership." So they still have a relationship together now as their parents. So they have the relationship with their children. They still communicate with each other regularly. So they still have a relationship, but they want to bring their relationship back to a life partnership. So before their relationship was as life partners, now it's most likely their relationship together is more like friends perhaps. So they want to take it from where they are now, friends, and back to life partnership. And we're using back because this is what they previously had. So it's a little bit difficult because we have relationship together. Let me just put this. This is the thing, their relationship together. This is what they want to bring back to a life partnership. So I'll put that there, a life partnership. She explained, he can't be this perfect, idealized husband. Let's talk about idealized. When you idealize something or someone, you think about that something or someone in a way that's better than the reality is. So we all have idealized ideas of what a relationship is, what a husband is, what a wife is, especially when we have so many romantic movies where the relationships are just perfect in these movies. But then in reality, it's very different. So we have an idealized version of what a relationship should be, is what she's saying. And I see this a lot with my students. I feel like a lot of my students idealize living in North America when it comes to being able to improve their English. Not about the life in North America specifically, but a lot of students think that the only reason why they're not fluent is because they don't live in North America, an English-speaking country. However, I have many students who have been in North America for 10, 15 years and still struggle with their English as much as someone not living in North America. So I feel like students outside of North America have this idealized version of how their English will improve as soon as they move to the United States. Now, notice there's a minor difference here in spelling. In North America, American English, we spell idealize with a Z, whereas in British English, they spell it with an S. There's no difference in pronunciation, and honestly, I didn't think this looked weird at all. So if you use the S or you use the Z, it does not matter. They're both correct, and the pronunciation is exactly the same. I have to be able to accept him for the human he is. So she's saying in reality, he's not this perfect person, this perfect husband that you might expect from movies. He's a person. Now he has to accept me for the human I am. So she's saying the same thing about herself. And we want to love each other there. The there in this place, it's not overly clear what location she's talking about, but to me, I read this as there being a place where they understand that both of them are just people who have flaws. They're not perfect. Their relationship isn't a fairy tale romance. They're regular people with regular issues. That's the location she wants to have the relationship, because that's reality. When asked if the couple might live in the same house again, because remember, currently they're separated, to be separated. They separated, the verb form, they separated in 2016, so now they are separated. When asked if the couple might live in the same house again, she agreed they might. Notice this very important word choice, might. Might is a modal verb, so just remember grammatically, you need the modal and then the base verb. So might live, might live. This is the base verb because there's no to in front of it, might live. Now, as a modal verb, might represents probability, how likely something is to happen. When I hear might, in my mind, it's not very certain. There's about a 50% chance it will happen, but then there's equally a 50% chance that it won't happen. So if my friend said to me, "Oh, I might come to the party," that doesn't sound very certain. I most likely would not make plans with my friend. If I needed a ride to the party, I would not count on my friend if she said I might come to the party, because that's only about 50%. That's not very high. If my friend had said I'll likely come to the party, well, then I would feel a lot more confident having my friend as my ride, my form of transportation, because likely is about 80%. Now, this isn't an exact science, but close to 80%, close to 50%. So the fact that she said they might, there's an equal chance that they might not. On Wednesday, as part of a book launch, when you launch a book, it means you introduce that book to the public for the first time. So to launch something, you can launch a business, you can launch a new project, but in this case, she launched a book. She made that book public for the very first time. But notice grammatically, we're not using this as a verb form. We're using this as a noun. And it's very common to use a launch as a noun as well. Let's review these two sentences. I launched my new book last week, which means I made my book available to the public for the first time last week. So this is the verb. I launched my new book last week, and that's why it's in the past simple form because of last week. Now, I could also say, hey, are you coming to my book launch? Now, in this case, I'll launch, this is the noun form, my book launch. This is either an event where you launch the book. So at this event, I make the book publicly available for the first time, or is simply an event where we celebrate the launch of my book. So my book is already available, it's already been launched, and we're just celebrating the fact. Now, hopefully you don't say, I might come to your book launch, because then there's only a 50% chance. So hopefully you say something like, I'll definitely come to your book launch. You can say, I'll definitely come to your book launch. And then if you want to make it sound even stronger, I remembered this really great expression we have in English. You can say, I wouldn't miss it for the world. This is an expression. So you have to use all of these words just as they are. I wouldn't miss it for the world, which means 100% you're coming to my launch. It is extremely strong. So if I needed a ride from you, I would feel very confident if you said that. And then the it, you can replace that with whatever you want. I wouldn't miss your book launch. I wouldn't miss your wedding. I wouldn't miss your retirement party. I wouldn't miss your graduation ceremony for the world. And again, is just an expression to say how likely it is and you are 100% going to attend. Now thinking about how likely you are to watch my next YouTube video, my next Learn English with the News YouTube video, I hope you're thinking, Jennifer, I wouldn't miss it for the world, which means you are absolutely going to watch my next YouTube video. So put this in the comments. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Jennifer, I wouldn't miss it for the world. And then I'll feel very confident that you are going to watch my next video and it will motivate me to make the video for you. So put that in the comments. Now let's continue. On Wednesday, as part of a book launch, she said she had considered a legal divorce, but could not go through with it because she was determined to work through it. So notice we have the past perfect because this is an event that happened before another event. So she had considered it in the past. But now let's talk about to go through with something and also to work through something. Because notice we have two expressions with through, but they have different meanings. So let's talk about each of these. First, let's talk about to go through with something. This is when you do something and that something is always unpleasant or difficult. And you do something unpleasant or difficult that you committed to. So you said you were going to do something like get a divorce. But in this case, which is obviously unpleasant and difficult, but in this case, I could not go through with it, which means that she didn't get divorced, even though previously she said she was going to get divorced, but she couldn't go through with it. So we often use this expression in the negative, and we often say, oh, I know I said I was going to quit my job, but I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't go through with it. So for thinking of Jada and Will, maybe they said, this is not true. They did not say this. It's just an example. But we agreed to tell our kids about our separation, but we couldn't go through with it. So which means they didn't do it. Even though they committed to it, they didn't do it. Why? Because it was just so unpleasant and difficult to have to tell your kids that. So they couldn't go through with it. Even though this was just my example, it's not true. Okay, so she couldn't go through with it because she was determined to work through it. So now let's talk about to work through something. This is a positive expression because when you work through something, it means you find a solution to a problem. We commonly use this with relationships. So let's say your best friend came to you and said, my husband and I, or my wife and I, are having difficulties. You might say, oh, don't worry, you'll work through it. You'll work through it, which means you'll find a solution to that problem. Let's continue. She put the relationship breakdown. So the breakdown of the relationship, that's when the relationship started to become negative. It took a turn for the worse. It was no longer a loving, positive relationship. It was more negative than positive. The breakdown. So this is the noun form, the breakdown. Another word for that is simply deterioration. So you can say when the relationship started to become negative, that would be the relationship breakdown. She put the relationship breakdown to a lot of things. And by 2016, remember, this is when they separated in 2016. By 2016, they were exhausted with trying. So that's why they separated. They just didn't want to try anymore. And the relationship officially broke down. Previously, there had been speculation about the couple's marriage. So speculation is when people say things, they guess things, but they don't actually know if it's true. So the media probably said things like, Jada and Will Smith are not happy, but they're just speculating because they don't actually know if that's true. Maybe because they didn't see them together in public a lot. And maybe people started speculating that the marriage was in trouble, that the marriage was breaking down, deteriorating. Previously, there had been speculation about the couple's marriage in 2020 after the pair discussed on her Facebook show, Red Table Talk, that Pinkett Smith, Jada, had been in an entanglement with artist August Alsina. Entanglement, this seems to be a term that Jada created because it's not one I had heard before. The more common way of saying it is that she had been in a romantic relationship, which we refer to as an affair. When you're married and you have a romantic relationship with someone else, we call that an affair, So here's an example. We separated, the verb to separate, we separated because she had an affair or he had an affair. So you have an affair. An affair is just a romantic relationship when you're already with a romantic partner. The actors met in 1994. This is Will and Jada. Wow, that's a very long time ago. The actors met in 1994 when she auditioned for The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which, if you don't know, this is the show that Will Smith became very popular from. It's a great show if you've never watched it. And it's old though, it's from the 90s. And later married in 1997. So that's how long the couple has been together, since 1997. It's a long time. The pair, of course, they mentioned it before and I didn't explain it, but pair means two. Another word that's commonly used, which I believe was already in this article I didn't explain either, is the couple, which means two. Pair is commonly used with a lot of clothing and accessories. For example, a pair of mittens, a pair of shoes, a pair of boots, things that come in two, I guess, for your hands and feet. That's when they generally come in two. So I bought a pair of mittens and a pair of boots. So notice the pair part is singular because one pair. If you bought two pairs of boots, not trick question, a real question. How many boots do you have? If you bought two pairs of boots, how many boots do you have? Well, hopefully that's easy for you. You have 4 boots. But if you bought one pair of mittens, how many mittens do you have? 2 mittens. Just to help you learn that. Okay, so remember, pair is singular, but it can be plural because you can buy 2 pairs or 3 pairs or 4 pairs if you want. So the pair, more commonly referred to as the couple, but I do hear pair from time to time. The couple, the pair, have 2 children together, Jaden Smith and Willow Smith, along with Trey Smith, Smith's son. So in this case, the Smith is Will Smith's son from his first marriage. I didn't know Will Smith was married before, and I didn't know he had a child with another woman. You learn something new every day. And that's the end of our article. And I did share the 2 links to the previous articles I've done on Will Smith, the Oscar slap, Chris Rock, and the whole situation. So this is available in the free lesson PDF. So make sure you download that. The link's in the description. I'll also leave these 2 links in the description as well. So that's the end of the article. What I'll do now is I'll read the article from start to finish, and this time you can focus on my pronunciation. Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith healing relationship. Jada Pinkett Smith has said she and Will Smith are working very hard on their marriage after revealing last week that they separated in 2016. They have been living separately, she said, despite regularly appearing together. The couple made headlines last year when Will Smith stormed the stage at the Oscars and slapped host Chris Rock. Speaking to NBC's Today Show, she said, "We are working very hard at bringing our relationship together back to a life partnership." She explained, "He can't be this perfect idealized husband. I have to be able to accept him for the human he is. He has to accept me for the human I am. And we want to love each other there." When asked if the couple might live in the same house again, she agreed they might. On Wednesday, as part of a book launch, she said she had considered a legal divorce, but could not go through with it because she was determined to work through it. She put the relationship breakdown to a lot of things, and by 2016, they were exhausted with trying. Previously, there had been speculation about the couple's marriage in 2020 after the pair discussed on her Facebook show Red Table Talk that Pinkett Smith had been in an entanglement with artist August Alsina. The actors met in 1994 when she auditioned for The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and later married in 1997. The pair have 2 children together, Jaden Smith and Willow Smith, along with Trey Smith, Smith's son from his first marriage. Amazing job. Now let's continue and expand your vocabulary even further. You are going to learn phrasal verbs that native speakers commonly use in our everyday speech. So having these phrasal verbs in your vocabulary will help you understand native speakers and sound more fluent as well. So let's get started with this section. And make sure you watch until the end because I'm going to quiz you to make sure you really understand these phrasal verbs. Let's get started. Number 1, to act out. This is when you perform or explain something using actions and gestures. For example, right now I'm acting out "it's raining" using my actions and my gestures. I'm teaching you this one because when you don't speak a language fluently, often we act out what we mean to help the other person understand. For example, I couldn't think of the word for sunrise, so I acted it out. How you're going to act out sunrise, I'm not sure. You can try though. Another example, I'm not sure what you mean. Could you try acting it out? This could be a smart way for you to understand what someone else is saying. Number 2, to belt out. I love this one because it means to sing loudly. For example, the crowd belted out the national anthem before the game. So the crowd sang the national anthem loudly. They belted it out. And here's another example that is true for me. I love driving alone because I can belt out my favorite songs. I can sing those songs very loudly. Number 3, to catch up with someone. This is a must-know phrasal verb. This is when you meet someone after a period of time to find out what they've been doing. So let's say you and your friend haven't seen each other for 1 month. Well, you don't know what your friend has been doing for that 1 month. So you could text your friend and say, "We need to catch up. Are you free tomorrow?" This is a very common way that 2 native speakers will arrange a social gathering. You could also simply say, "Let's catch up soon." And this means let's meet soon so I can find out what you've been doing and you can find out what I've been doing since the last time we saw each other. Number 4, to grind away at something. This is when you work on something for a long time or with a lot of effort. For example, I had to grind away at my taxes all weekend. So this means I worked on my taxes, but because I said grind away at, you know it took me a long time and a lot of effort. You could also say, I've been grinding away at this report all week, but it's still not done. So you've spent a lot of time on this report, you've put in a lot of effort, but it's still not done. You've been grinding away at it. Number 5, to gnaw at. This means to trouble, worry, or annoy someone. First of all, notice that silent G, gnaw. Gnaw. It starts with an N sound. Gnaw at. To gnaw at. For example, his text message has been gnawing at me all day. So his text message has been troubling me, worrying me, or annoying me. You don't exactly know which one it is, but based on context and based on my emotion, my facial emotion, you would know. His text message has been gnawing at me all day. Or let's say you were in a meeting and your coworker said something negative about you in front of everyone, and it's been bothering you. Well, your friend could say, don't let his comment gnaw at you. Don't let his comment bother you or annoy you. Number 6, to pull oneself together. This means to become calm or to regain control of your emotions.
Calm down, calm down, calm down.
So let's say your coworker made that angry or rude or mean comment towards you in front of everyone else, and you became very emotional. You became very upset or very agitated or very angry even. Your friend could say, pull yourself together, to let you know you need to regain control of your emotions because you're being too upset, too angry. We also commonly use this in the imperative, pull yourself together. So notice with the imperative, you start with the base verb. Pull yourself together, you need to pull yourself together. Both of those are very common. And then an hour later, your friend could say, hey, I was calling you. Where were you? And you could say, oh, I went for a walk alone to pull myself together, to regain control of my emotions and simply to become calm. Number 7, to rack up. This means to acquire a lot of something, and that something is generally negative. For example, I racked up a lot of parking tickets while I was on vacation. So maybe you're in a new city and you're not familiar with the parking rules and regulations. So you racked up a lot of parking tickets. Parking tickets are, of course, negative. Or you could say, when I was a student, I racked up a lot of student debt. Again, student debt is, of course, a negative, and you racked it up, you acquired it. Number 8, to rub off on. This is when a quality or a characteristic is passed from one person to another person. For example, her passion and enthusiasm rubbed off on me. So this means my friend was being very passionate and enthusiastic. And because of that, I became very passionate and enthusiastic. So her passion and enthusiasm rubbed off on me. But we also use this with negative qualities and characteristics. For example, don't let Frank's anxiety rub off on you. So Frank is always anxious, and he's sharing his anxieties in public with his team. If you're not careful, his anxieties could rub off on you, which means you will become anxious simply because Frank is anxious and you're in the same room as Frank. Number 9, to slip up. This means to make a careless error or mistake. For example, I can't believe I slipped up and told her about her surprise party. So there was a surprise party being planned for this person, and because it's a surprise, you're not supposed to let the person know. But I slipped up and I told her about the party. I made a mistake and it was a careless mistake. I should have known better. Another example, you purchased 1,000 units instead of 100 units. That was a real slip up. What do you notice here? A slip up. Here it's being used as the noun form to simply mean a mistake, a careless mistake. And finally, number 10, to talk down. This is when you try to make something sound less important than it really is in reality. For example, the CEO tried to talk down the recent layoffs. Layoffs is when you fire people from a company because there is no longer work for them. So that sounds like the company could be in trouble. But if you try to talk down the recent layoffs, it means you try to make them sound less severe, less important than they really are. Or remember when I accidentally ordered 1,000 units instead of 100 units? Well, I could say I tried to talk down my slip up. Remember here, slip up is being used as the noun form of the phrasal verb to slip up, and it means a careless mistake. I tried to talk down my slip up, my careless mistake. So I tried to make my mistake, the fact I ordered 10 times as many units as needed, I tried to make that sound like not a big deal, not a big mistake. I tried to talk down my slip up. And now you have the top 10 phrasal verbs added to your vocabulary. So, are you ready for your quiz? Here are the questions. Hit pause, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. How did you do with that quiz? Well, let's find out. Here are the answers. Hit pause and take as much time as you need to review them. So how'd you do with that quiz? Make sure you share your score in the comments below and also leave an example sentence practicing your favorite phrasal verb. What's your favorite phrasal verb from the list? Mine is probably slip up, but as the noun. I made a slip up, a careless mistake, because let's be honest, it happens to everyone, right? What's your favorite? Share that in the comments below. You're doing such a great job. You have learned so much already. Now, finally, I want to leave you with 10 study tips that will help you maximize your time. I know you're busy. I know your time is limited, but I also know that you can get amazing results with your English, even with limited time, if you use that time correctly. So let me share 10 study tips to help you maximize your time. Tip number 1, create a study schedule. This is extremely important. Your study schedule should identify the specific day, or ideally the specific days of the week that you're going to study. And it should also identify the start time and the end time of that session. So for example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 6 o'clock to 6:30. And then maybe Saturday and Sunday from 9 o'clock to 9:45. Ideally, your goal should be 5 days a week for 30 minutes each day. As a pro tip, I want you to choose the day and time extremely carefully. Make sure the time you put in your calendar is realistic and you can actually spend the time on your studies. And when it's in your calendar, treat it like an appointment. You wouldn't miss an appointment, so don't miss this time, your study time. Tip 2, set a clear goal for each study session. The worst thing you can do is sit down at your scheduled time and then say to yourself, what should I study? Or just randomly watch YouTube videos or randomly look through an English textbook. That's going to waste a lot of time. Before you begin your study session, you should know exactly what you're going to do with that time. For example, before you sit down, you know that you're going to complete the practice exercises for week 2 of your lesson in the Finally Fluent Academy, which is my premium training program. And my students get a study schedule that I've created for them when they join. So as a pro tip, make sure you take 5 minutes before your scheduled study time, or ideally the day before. Just take a few minutes and plan exactly what you're going to do in that scheduled time. Tip number 3, you want to maximize your study time. 30 minutes is not created equally. Some people will have 30 minutes and they will accomplish nothing with that time. Another person will have 30 minutes and accomplish a lot. So how you use that time matters. You can maximize your 30 minutes by, first of all, removing all distractions. You need to turn off all social media when you're focusing on your study time. You need to turn off all notifications. Lock your pets in another room so they don't come and distract you and take your attention away. Have your water, your tea, whatever supplies you need for that session already in the room so you don't have to leave and get a glass of water, which will take time away from studying. And also make sure you set a timer. So if your study session is for 30 minutes, set a timer, because even just wondering what time it is, how much time has passed, takes your attention away and you're losing time. Now, as a pro tip, make sure you leave your phone in an entirely different room, assuming you're not using your phone to study. That will definitely eliminate the distraction and that temptation to pick up your phone during your scheduled study time, which will, of course, waste a lot of time. Tip number 4, improve multiple skills at once. A lot of students study using word lists, and they have an individual word and a definition. But that is only improving one skill. If you follow my YouTube channel, you know I love sharing videos where we learn English with the news, because you're learning so many different skills at once. You're improving your reading, your listening, your vocabulary, your grammar, your pronunciation, your speaking. You're doing all of that at once, so you're maximizing your time by focusing on multiple skills. Tip number 5, learn words in context. So again, you use a vocabulary list and you learn an expression off track. And you see the definition for that expression. Off track, not making progress. But when you learn a word in context, it means you have a full sentence that's a natural sentence, the way a native speaker would use that expression. For example, yesterday our meeting went off track when John brought up the consultant's report. So here you see the word being used in context, you understand the meaning a lot more, and you also understand the grammar. You understand that you need to go off track, and then you see, okay, yesterday I need the past simple, went off track, and you learn a lot more when you see grammar or vocabulary in context. Tip number 6, repetition, repetition, repetition. It's so important, I repeated it 3 times. According to scientists, we forget about 50% of new information in 1 hour, which means 1 hour from now, you'll forget half of these tips. And scientists say that we forget 70% of new information within 24 hours. So you won't remember very much from this lesson tomorrow, unless you repeat, repeat, repeat. Our brains were designed to remember information only if it's repeated, because that tells our brain the information is important. So if you want to remember what you're learning, you need to repeat, repeat, repeat. And as a pro tip, it's more beneficial to have a quick review multiple times a day rather than once a week and having a longer review, because we need that constant repetition. Tip 7, you need to recall information, which means your brain provides that information without seeing it. So we do this when we quiz ourselves or when we complete practice exercises. You're recalling that information. So let's try that right now. We didn't make a lot of progress at the meeting. The meeting, how would you complete that sentence based on the expression I taught you just a few minutes ago? The meeting went off track. The meeting went off track. So right there, you just recalled that definition, which will make it a lot more likely you'll remember it the next time. And as a pro tip, you can complete just the quizzes in my lessons frequently to help you recall information. Tip number 8 is quality over quantity. According to scientists, we can remember about 5 to 9 new words per day. That's about the maximum capacity that our brain has. So it's not very beneficial to review a word list of 300 positive adjectives because you're not going to remember very many of them. It's more beneficial just to learn the top 8 or 9 adjectives that you can use in a meeting to sound professional at work. As a pro tip, You can take my videos, which teaches you many, many words, more than 5 to 9 in each lesson, but you can divide that lesson into smaller pieces and just focus on a few words, 5 to 9 ideally, learn them, practice them, repeat them, recall them, and then move on with the lesson. Tip number 9, practice different skills. Students are obsessed with practicing their speaking skills. Of course, speaking is important, but there are many other skills you need to improve as well. So practice writing, write example sentences. Of course, practice speaking, say it out loud. You can focus on your pronunciation by recording yourself and then comparing the pronunciation. And you can improve your listening skills by hearing your new vocabulary in a natural context. So do all these different exercises to improve different language skills. And as a pro tip, make sure you add these different areas to your study schedule. So you remember, one day practice speaking, another day practice writing, another day practice pronunciation. And finally, tip number 10, my personal favorite, which is to reward yourself. When you reward yourself, it creates positive reinforcement, which means you feel positive. And if you feel positive, you're more likely to do the action. So you're more likely to spend 30 minutes and really concentrate on that time if you reward yourself. Now, the reward should just be something small, very small, but it needs to immediately make you feel good. So here are some ways I reward myself after spending a focused time. I listen to a song I really like, I sing and I dance, I spend time with my pets, I check the YouTube comments and I reply to them because I love doing that. I might watch some cat videos on YouTube for 5 minutes, not an hour, but 5 minutes. You could eat a piece of chocolate or something very small that you like, or you could go for a walk or a bike ride and do something physical. Remember, it can be very small, but it has to make you feel good immediately. And as a pro tip, reward yourself immediately after the behavior because that will create the positive reinforcement. Follow these 10 tips and I know that you'll maximize your time, you'll stop wasting your time, which means you'll get results a lot faster. So which tip was your favorite? Make sure you share that in the comments below. And also put in the comments, I'm committed. I'm committed, which means you're committed to following these 10 tips. Put I'm committed in the comments below. You did it! Amazing job completing this lesson. Now feel free to review this lesson, and of course you can review the individual sections on their own or the full video. And if you want me to keep making more lessons like this, one big lesson but with individual sections that you can review whenever you like, then put more. Put more in the comments, more, so I know you want me to keep making these videos for you. And of course, make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And you can keep improving your English with this lesson right now.